Hey guys, this is Jeremy Egger here from JE Recording. I'm one of the many engineers that works on the 856 soundboard mixes for the live videos from This Is Hardcore. I wanted to do a brief tutorial for the Code Orange video, just to give kind of people a general idea of what we get and deal with and how, well, what my approach is for mixing. I know all the other guys have various ways of approaching these mixes. I just wanted to give you kind of a rundown of how I normally do things. First, I wanted to shout out Sonny and 856 for bringing me in on this project and let me mix these videos, and Len Carmichael from Landmine Sound, who was the original engineer that brought me on. And also just to all the other guys who do this, I just want to get this out of the way at the beginning because people don't normally watch these videos all the way through. So myself, Len, Joe, Tim, Dylan, everybody else involved, we don't make money off of doing these mixes. This is just for us to get our names out there as recording and mix engineers. We all, pretty much all of us, have regular 9-to-5 jobs, and we just kind of do this as a hobby. All of us would probably love to do it full time. So if you're looking to have your record mixed or recorded wherever, we're all in different parts of like the New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia area. I myself from Union County in northern New Jersey. So if you're looking for a studio in that area, Len's down by Ewing, close to Philly. So if you're looking for a studio in that area, we are all available to mix your records. And even the way we do the This Is Hardcore stuff, I mean, it's all over Google Drive. So even if you're a band in Missouri and you want one of us to mix your record, it's just as easy to send it off to one of us, and we'll take the tracks and mix it, master it, whatever you guys are looking for. So make sure you contact myself or any of the other guys that work on this stuff, if you're looking for somebody to do your record. So I picked the Code Orange set because this one is a bit messier than what we normally get, and I kind of wanted to just use that as an example to be like, we try our best. The sounds we get aren't perfect, but we could take something that's not probably the best source material and hopefully make it somewhat listenable for everybody, better than just the microphone on the camera. So Code Orange, from what Len told me, because Len's the guy recording all the stuff live, Code Orange did a full set changeover. So if you know anything about This Is Hardcore, most of the bands, they set up using the same backline. Code Orange, came in and brought in all their own equipment, so they had to do a set changeover. And if anybody's ever worked in live sound, trying to get that all mic'd up and ready to go quickly can be a daunting task in such a short period of time. So what ended up happening is, some of the files we got are not that great. The mics may be pointed in the wrong direction. The feeds that come to us from the Electric Factory, sorry, I was getting confused between the two venues. The Electric Factory is not direct feeds, so they're post fader, post EQ, post any like compression effects that are aux sends to Len's recording rig. So anything that the guys at the monitor mix console, which is on the side of the house, not the front of house console, the side of house console, the monitor mix console, whatever they change on the aux sends to Len's makes it into the recording. So sometimes you get missing audio, sometimes you get, in a lot of cases on these tracks, you get combined signals that just sound wacky. So I'm just going to go ahead. I disabled all the plugins ahead of time, and I'm just going to go ahead and play the track. So I personally bounce everything to an audio file within Pro Tools, so I could toggle back and forth between the rough tracks that we got and the final mix that you see on the video quickly, and then I'll go through some of these tracks here and just go through some of my plugin settings and kind of what my philosophy with mixing this stuff is. But for right now, I'm gonna just play the beginning of the set and then kind of toggle between the source tracks that we got and what the final mix sounds like. Hopefully it sounds better. I don't know, that's your opinion. whatever. But let's listen to it. So as you could hear, that's a pretty significant difference, and you know, these tracks may have required a little more love than some of the other sets that we do, but I think, you know, overall with what I was given, I'm happy with the way it came out. You know, it did what I could with the source tracks we were given. So just going to briefly go through the tracks, all this stuff in blue here. Normally I color code things, but with the 856 stuff, usually I'm rushing through it, trying to get them done, a whole mix done in, you know, a day or two. So I was lazy, didn't color code everything. So all the stuff here in blue is the original source tracks. The bass amp is actually a copy of the bass DI that I just make. I duplicate the bass DI because that's all we get off the board is a bass DI. And I just ran it through an amp sim, a Waves Thunder Bass amp sim, just to give it a little more, because DI is very lacking in low end. So I run it through that. For Code Orange, you have 3 guitars. We have a DI track. The drummer is the main singer, so we have a drum vocal mic, a couple other vocal mics, and we actually, Sonny has a little Zoom stereo field recorder that will import the audio to kind of get more of a crowd, you know, full venue sound. And that's the Zoom file. It's just a stereo file, and you kind of have to eyeball, usually on like a kick hit or a snare hit, to line it up, because this is not a perfect sign. Is, you know, we aren't professionals. We don't have a truck out back with time code, MIDI time code machines and all that stuff, syncing up all the video and audio. So a lot of this work is manual. This is my print track. Like I said, I print to a stereo file within Pro Tools, so I can master it just within the same session, just for ease of, for time's sake. And then I got a couple buses, drum buses, parallel drum, crush bus, bass bus, guitar bus. And this is my master bus aux track that I send all the audio to, so I could print this master stuff through it to the audio track. And this reference track, I try to, you know, I'll import a sound file from the actual band. So if I take a look at the edit window, you know, I imported a sound clip of the actual I Am King track at the end, so I could reference it to the live version of I Am King. It's not going to be perfect, but just overall tone and level wise, just to have sort of a reference. So yeah, enough of me yammering on. Let's get to some of this audio. So first thing I always do is have my master bus chain, which is always on from the beginning, that I'm listening through. Meter, just to make sure I'm not like overloading everything. Master bus compressor is just the Slate SSL emulation, and then the virtual mix rack, which I have a little bit of a blend of the tube console, some EQ. A lot of these tracks have pretty good high end boost and pretty good low end boost, because the tracks coming in are kind of a little dull coming in off the board, and then just the SSL console emulation. So we bypass that stuff real quick, and I'll play it and then turn it on, and you can kind of hear the difference. So I could see EQ makes a big difference. It really brightens up the tracks. Let's go through some of the drums first. Here's a kick that we got from the board. I believe this is just coming from Len. I believe that's just like a little PZM or like an SM91 inside the kick. So it's very clicky, very a lot of high end, not a lot of low end. So what I do is I run it through this SSL console emulation from Brainworks, boost a lot of low end, cut out a lot of mids, low mids, boost a tiny bit of top end, low pass and high pass just to get some of that high frequency and sub information out, and compressing it just a little bit. So you can see that low end boost makes a huge difference. And then I just, for loudness sakes when mastering it, so I don't lose the kick drum when I put my mastering limiter on, I just do very minor, as you can see, very minor clipping on it. Snare. Not a bad snare. Could use a little help. Same thing, SSL console. This is just nice because it's got everything you really need in one plugin. I like the compressor because, especially for drums, because it's an auto gain compressor, so it really evens out a lot of the drum hits, especially in a live situation. Like I said, little low pass, get rid of some of the kick drum, a little bit of top end, just to, you know, bring that sizzle out a little bit, cut out like a little bit of a ring at around 850, and then just a little beef, a little 215 or so. So here's the snare with that plugin on. Alright, toms, pretty straightforward. Try to gate them a little bit because there is a lot of cymbal bleed in the toms, but it's not going to be perfect, so I kind of use the cymbal bleed a little to fill out the drums. You know, I don't gate it too much. It's only when it's closed, it's only down about 9 dB, so it doesn't, you don't get that sizzle when the gate opens. And just adding a little top end and cutting out some low mids, adding a little bottom end just to give it some life. That's how both toms are. Let me see if I could find a section with some tom fills. Here we go. So you can hear the gate. When the gate closes, you can hear it a little bit with the toms and solo. You don't really notice it with the whole drums in. Just to get rid of some of that cymbal bleed, or cut it down a little bit. Hi-hat, not much going on here, just a high-pass filter. There's always too much hi-hat mic. We could listen to it, but it's a hi-hat. As you can tell, there's a lot of kick in the hi-hat, so just high-pass the crap out of it. Overheads is just a mono overhead. Again, SSL console, filtering out a lot of the bass, just adding a little sizzle, and just cutting out a little bit of low end. That's really it with the overheads. Oops, forgot to put it in solo. That would help. So let's bypass it and turn it off and on. So with the overhead probably coming off the board, they probably EQ'd some of the bottom out already. I just got rid of it all because it's not really helping that much. Forgot about this clip on the snare. Clipper on the snare, same thing as drum, just so when I put the mastering limiter on, you don't lose a lot of snare level. Now here for my drum bus, I do kind of two things. I have my main drum bus, which is really just going through like an API emulation, just because I like the way the API sounds on drums. And then I have a parallel drum bus, which is kind of getting distorted through the same API console emulation, but with the drive all the way up, and then going through this Slate. What is this? Slate distressor. Lost my train of thought there. Slate distressor emulation on the nuke mode with distortion. It's not fully, up in the mix here, but just to kind of give the drums a little more level. So I'll play the drums as a whole with this VCA fader, and then turn the drum crush bus off and on so you can kind of hear the difference. Let me find a heavier section or faster section so you can kind of hear it. So you can kind of hear just adding a little level, a little more attack to the drums, and just blend that underneath. Bass, let's do bass real quick next. So like I said, with bass, we just get a really crappy DI signal. So, as you can hear, no low end, just all kinds of distortion and top end. So, what I do is I just duplicate that track and then I run it through. I just ran it through this Waves guitar amp simulator, Thunder Bass 8x10 cab RE20 mic emulation, and then I don't normally do this. I try to mix everything through the bus, but I felt this needed just a little EQ and compression before going into the bus. So a little top end, cut out a little of this harshness here at 300, high pass it, and a little bit of compression. So let's hear that. And then on the bass bus, first I run it through Slate tape emulation, just because the tape's nice with just adding a little bit of bottom, sucking out some of that harsh fizziness at the top. And here's a massive chain. This bass needed a lot of work, if you can't tell by the original signal. So cutting out some of the high end, a lot of the high end, because there's a lot of weird noisy fizziness. Tube console emulation, SSL EQ, taking out some of the highs again, and a little more attack where like the pick attack is, cutting a little bit more out of the low mids, and adding a little beef at, where is this at, 130 hertz, compressing the hell out of it with an 1176, and then I like this revival a lot for bass, just adding a little bit, it's a harmonic saturation, harmonic distortion type plugin, so just adding a little bit of harmonic distortion at I don't know what actually if there's actually frequencies with these, but just a little bit of the thickness and the shimmer. So let's turn that all on, and I'll kind of bypass them, and then the Pro Q2, forgot about that, just some high pass, and then just notching out some weird because it's so fizzy, that bass, just notching out some weird noises and fizziness with the Pro Q2, which is really good for like zeroing in on things and getting rid of the nasty stuff. So bypass them real quick and then turn them on. Still not my favorite bass tone, but you gotta work with what you were given. So that was that with the bass tone. Let's see if we get to the guitars. So unfortunately, one of the guitars, I forget which one. That one's fine. I think it was the stage left guitar. Yeah, so with that stage left guitar, which is audience right, whatever. I believe stage right was Reba, and then the other two guys were on stage left, but they're labeled left and center because the center guitar is the guitar player that plays keyboards, so he doesn't play this guitar too much, so I left it in center. This one, if you could listen to it, you could tell there's a lot of bleed. I don't know if the mic was not pointing directly at the cab, or if it just accidentally got blended with another signal on the board. So this one needed a little bit more work. So I put this transient designer just to cut. This is good, better to me than a gate sometimes because it sounds a little more natural. Cut down the sustain just so when the guitar stops playing, it helps a little bit with the background noise. I mean, I don't know if you could tell. Let me play it a little bit. See if you could hear it. It just kind of helps a little bit with the guitar. Also, because it probably wasn't pointing at the cab the right way, I felt I needed to beef it up a little and give it a little more top end just because it was missing that information. So the harmonic distortion stuff with Revival is really good for that again. So I added a little bit of thickness and shimmer. This is on here for no reason. I probably was checking phase against the other guitar and it was fine, and I just left it in. So we'll add that back in. So you could hear with that, some of that thickness comes back in. And then goes into the SSL thing, cutting out some low end, cutting out some top end fizz. On this guitar, I ended up cutting out a little more top end fizz, probably picking up some of the cymbals and some in range, cutting out some low mid stuff, and added a little beef to this one just because it was really lacking. So let's bypass that and hear it. So that makes a big difference. It's a little bright, but in the context of the whole mix, I don't really mix in solo too much. In the context of the whole mix, you'll really hear it. So Reba's guitar, the main guitar, this was pretty good shape, not too noisy, so I didn't have to do too much to it. Just a little low pass, high pass, just to get rid of some of that noise. A little boost around 2K, just to make it cut through a little bit more. Cut out a little bit of 400 just because it's a little honky mid-range. So here's that. So just cleaning that up a little bit. Center guitar, just low pass and high pass. It sounded pretty good. He doesn't play it too often. Let me find a couple spots where he does. Let's see here. Nope. That seems to be picking up a lot of bleed too, which is why it's kind of low in the mix. Let's see if this is here a good part. So yeah, decent guitar, just high and low pass. Like I said, he doesn't play it that much. Then I normally don't do this, but just because of the wild variations in levels you get sometimes, and all that weirdness you get with live guitars, I ran it through a bus. Kramer Helios, just cutting out a little low end, and just adding a little bit of mid-range just to brighten them. Felt them, they, I guess, just needed to be a little bit brighter. So let's see if we can solo the guitars and listen to that. So that really makes actually a big difference. I believe I used that because I was watching Andrew Shep's tutorial, and he said he liked the Kramer Helios model on guitars, so I tried it, made everything sound good, so you keep it on there. Next is a Massey CT5. I really like this compressor because it's pretty transparent. You can crush things a good amount, and you can't really tell that it's being compressed too hard. I do it for this because, like I said, with the way live guitars are, and Code Orange has a couple songs with clean parts, this and that, you may get wildly varying levels left and right, and this just helps the overall guitar picture. This is a dual mono. I run this in dual mono, so if the left gets louder, it won't really affect the right side and vice versa. So I run this in dual mono just to kind of keep the levels a little bit even. I will do some automation, but this will just overall keep anything from getting too wildly out of whack and kind of keep the guitars in check. And this, like I said, this compressor is transparent for that, so we'll hear that real quick. Like I say, it doesn't make a huge difference in the tone, but it does even out the guitars a lot. Vocals. This was the big mess. So if you know anything about Code Orange, the drummer's the singer. But since his mic is kind of pointing at the drums and he's kind of a wild singer, you get crazy stuff happening all the time. Here, hit it real quick without any plugins. So yeah, you hear a lot of drums there, cymbals. So first thing I did is run it through this Pro MB, and I'm just using it as an expander. So if he's not playing, so you can see it gets rid of a lot of that cymbal bleed. Just so when I'm try to EQ his voice, so you don't get too much harsh cymbal stuff. It goes virtual mix rack. So his vocal didn't sound like it was compressed on the way in, so I kind of did a little bit of distressor compression at first, just to grab some of the peaks. Some SSL EQ, 1176. A little more top end EQ with this parallel lift, which is really nice for that, and then just giving him some little level. So let's listen to this. Oh, forgot to put him in solo. Here we go. Let's go to a longer vocal passage here.
You don't gotta.
That's not a good one.
There
we go. You see, huge jump in level because his vocal coming in off the main mix was kind of quiet. Stressor's not doing too much, just grabbing some of those real high peaks. And the 1176 is really just evening out the whole thing. Then I kind of run it through RVox, just on the gate, so any passages he's not singing, it closes the mic a little bit, and just to give it some overall level. Like I said, it didn't sound like he was compressed coming in, so trying to make him sit above all the loud, noisy mid-range that is Code Orange, was tough. So let's hear that whole thing again.
You are nothing to say! What you think
So there you got that. I skipped over this DI. I believe this is just the keyboard DI. So yeah, that's keyboard synth noise, whatever sample DI that the center guitar player plays for most of the stuff now. Just some console emulation, just for a little harmonic distortion. Just boost the top end and mid-range a little bit to help it cut through, and then just some light compression to even it out. Nothing crazy, so you want to hear that. Minor stuff, but just helps it cut through a little bit more. This vocal, stage right, I believe is Reba's vocal mic. Yes. So this one was recorded well, despite being on the stage, so there's not a ton of bleed. See here in that section, there's not a lot of bleed. 1, 2, oh! So fuck. But still needs a lot of compression when she does come in, so I copied the original, the same thing I used on the drummer's vocals, and just tweaked the settings a little bit, cut out some of the top end, just when it kicks on, just to absorb any cymbal or other bleed. And say about the same concept, just stressor to grab some of the peaks, 1176 to even it out, a little present lift with this one, and then just adding some overall level. Same thing with the RVox, so when she's not singing, the gate clamps down on the signal a little bit just to bring up the overall level, so we'll turn that on. 1, 2, oh! So God, no! Oh, no! Oh! So that's that. This center vocal, I don't think there's much going on with that. That was actually, oh yeah, that's a big problem vocal. It says center vocal, it's not actually a center vocal, it's a spare vocal mic that they had a couple of guest singers come up and sing, and it's a disaster. This is just the mic signal itself. So, as you could hear, it's just picking up noise and bleed from everywhere. It's even worse when somebody actually sings into it. So in this section here, step 2, 5! Now you crossed my line! It's completely clipped and distorted and mangled, so there wasn't too much I could do to salvage that. Don't remember if I automated it up and down in spots. No, doesn't look like it. I just left it as is because it was just kind of filler at that point, just so you could kind of hear the vocals. I ended up just high passing it just to get it to rid of any low end rumble, and then just left it as is. It was destroyed coming in, so I didn't really pull my hair out trying to salvage it, so that's it, is what it is. Now the other vocal mic is a disaster as well. The spare vocal mic for the center guitar / synth keyboard player was mixed, is either the worst horrible bleed or just the aux feed got a mix of everything. So let me turn the automation off for a second. So even though that's supposed to be just a spare vocal mic, it seems like it got a feed of the DI track. There's picking up some drums, so what I ended up having to do is anytime that he comes in with the vocal parts. I would just have to automate it up. Try to do the best I could so when the automation comes up, you don't hear too much background bleed. And then same kind of vocal chain. I just copied it from the other two and just tweaked it for his voice. Same basic concept. So just hear that real quick. A little heavier on the compression, just so when he does come in, it grabs everything because his vocal was a little louder. But yeah, if you could see here, this is all the parts he sings. I had to automate up, and it was still kind of, in the overall mix, you'll hear it's still kind of low, but I felt that if I brought the level up any louder, then there was just too much like cymbal and noise bleed, and it would too noticeable and blah blah blah. It was just not great. And then the last thing is the zoom. The zoom, like I said, is just a stereo mic that Sonny has that he records the whole thing. We drop it in, line it up as best we can, and we use that just to kind of bring out some of the crowd overall noise. Effects, same concept on the Massey as the guitars, because the mic does move around with Sonny. So dual mono compressor. Like I said, this is a very transparent compressor. Probably hitting this one a little bit harder, but the left side signal doesn't affect the right side. It's dual mono. Just to, if there's any wild level variations as he's moving around, it kind of evens everything out. So and I use the Waves Neve thing just to give it some overall EQ. So that's really it. I mean, like I said, this session's a little more plugin intensive than some of the other ones, but just because of the way the source tracks were, I kind of had to dig a little deeper into it. Overall, and I can't speak for the other guys who work on this stuff, my concept is I'm not really trying to change the performance. I'll do, like I said, the bass, I do the bass amp, which is just a copy of the original performance, just because the bass DI sounds like garbage and we don't get a feed from the actual bass amp signal. So I just kind of fake it just to fill it out, but me personally, I don't add any fake reverb, I don't trigger any drums, I don't alter the performance at all. I'll do some level automation just for certain parts, and that's really it. I try to preserve the natural performance. That's just me. I feel like this set, just, despite what was given to me, I was able to salvage it pretty well. I hope you guys actually agree. The rest of my chain, I have this stuff deactivated. That's just my mastering chain. Probably some other minor EQ. And then the Slate FGX just to crank the crap out of the level. I'm not going to turn it on because then it's just going to crank the level going to this feed. So that's really it. I just wanted to give a brief tutorial, like I said, on this. If anybody actually gives a shit, hopefully you do, and we're able to check it out. And if you have any questions or whatever on how I do things or how certain things are done, let me know. If there's actually any interest in this, I'll probably do a couple more tutorials. I'm thinking maybe I'll do one of the set we get from Union Transfer. So the Union Transfer console setup is completely different. Glenn can just plug a USB or FireWire cable into their console and get all the feeds direct with no they're not AUX tracks, they're just direct feeds, so he doesn't get any changes in EQ or whatever that happens in the board don't affect what's going into Pro Tools. So those tracks are pretty flat, and they're actually a lot nicer to mix because they're all pretty direct. I mean, there's a little bleed in some of the vocal mics and the drum mics, but everything else is actually pretty straightforward. So maybe I'll do one of those, and then maybe I'll do another one with another Electric Factory set that was used in the regular back line, and kind of show you the difference between what happens with doing a changeover and trying to set up mics as quick as you can for a set like Code Orange, and then what the rest of the sets sound like. Because a lot of people make comments, be like, "Oh, this set sounds like this set sounds like that. Why is it? Why can't I hear this or that?" And it's kind of like, well, everybody uses pretty much the same setup. Guitars change, guitar heads change, but the signal path is all the same. It's just the performances that are different and the players that are the difference. We don't do anything to change that stuff. It's just that's how those bands are, and that's why you hear a lot of differences, even though it's the same setup for most of the bands. So just want to put that out there. Also, this apologize for the quality of the actual screen grab. I just grabbed some cheap screen grab software that was like $5 because I can't warrant using $100 screen capture software if nobody gives a shit about this. But if enough people do, I'll drop the money on it to give it a more professional look, if you want to call it that, if I do these tutorials. So yeah, leave some comments below, shoot me an email in the link below, check out my Facebook page and SoundCloud clips below. And like I said, if you have any bands out there, people that just want me to record, mix their record, or any other guys that do this, just shoot me an email and we'll set something up.